I grew up in a Christian home, the oldest child, and I had two younger brothers. And I was always conscious of God right from my earliest memories, because I went to Sunday school from when I was about 3, and it was in a time when all the neighbourhood kids went to Sunday school, so it wasn't unusual. But I do remember when I was about 6 or 8, getting up early to go with my mother to 8 o'clock communion in the local Anglican church, and I just remember feeling a great deal of comfort from that service. Then at school, I went to a public school for primary, but the teacher, the headmistress, was a Brethren lady, and she was allowed to do Bible reading and prayer every morning before school, which in those days was, even though in those days that was a little bit unusual, but in 1959, when Billy Graham came to Australia, she organised a bus to take those who wanted to go, and was a full bus load, went one evening, and I made my public commitment to the Lord that night in 1959. I met my husband in the youth fellowship. He hadn't grown up in a Christian home, but he had met the Lord at 17, and we did get married fairly young by today's standards, and had 3 boys and a girl. It was in those busy child rearing years that we did stop going to church all the time. We just slipped away. Things were a bit awkward, and we did have a few years away from the Lord. And I think part of that is that you have to find your own faith, and not working through the faith of your parents. And I think that was a transition time for both of us. But we did go back to church, and we also made sure that the children went to Sunday school, and until they were a lot older, that was non-negotiable. After a few years away from church, we felt the need to go back. Both of us had felt the same need, and we did recommit to a church, and the children were in Sunday school. But in the 70s, the charismatic renewal was on, and that was the time when I really felt that I made a full commitment, and that was a turning point in my life with the baptism of the Holy Spirit in 1976, and we've been in Pentecostal churches ever since. I retired in 2013 from the healthcare industry, and my husband retired 2 years later, and we were looking for somewhere to retire to. He was a great fisherman, and we'd been down the south coast many times on holidays, and we found we felt that God was leading us to the Nowra area, and we now live only 10 minutes point from the water at Greenwell Point, so we're quite excited about that for our retirement. And when we got here, we spent a few months renovating our house, and then we knew it was time to look for a church. So I googled Pentecostal churches, and the first one that came up was what was called Manor House at the time, and it looked pretty good on the website, and so we came along, and we were so welcomed. Everyone was so friendly and made us feel like we'd been there already for some time. But we needed to test this because we had prayed that God would show us exactly the right church to belong to, and so we did try another church, but it was very clear that this was the right one. I've learned a lot about God in my walk as a Christian. He's my constant companion and the person that I trust most in the world. And I remember when things were hectic and I had a house full of teenagers, as I got out of the car to go to work, just praying for the strength and using that verse, the joy of the Lord is my strength, and that kept me going through some of those very busy, awkward years. God doesn't shield us from problems, but He just helps us go through them. He doesn't take away our problems, but He gives us the strength and endurance and the perseverance to get through. If you are struggling with anything, just hand it over to God and really wait for Him to work it out for you. He will give you the strength, He will just give you the endurance, and the perseverance is so important, that we don't run out on our problems, but we work through them and allow God to work through them in our lives, and we will be much stronger people for that.